Wonderful. And it's wonderful to be joining you, to be sitting together in this vast Zendo, right? This hall for zazen extends from lower Manhattan out to Cape Cod, where I'm joining you with Hyannis Zendo and some of our other members out here. Spreads to New Paltz and Western Mass. It appears in Bolivia, in Mexico, in Europe. This Zendo extends far and wide, wherever we practice together. We practice touching reality together. And 2,600 years ago is where I'd like to turn our attention, where this space of practice was also appearing. 2,600 years ago in the forests of northern India, where Siddhartha Gautama was on the precipice of awakening. He had left home 6 years before, left a life of privilege, left his wife and newborn infant son, and he spent those years living as an ascetic in the forests, the wild forests of India. And one night, as Siddhartha sat alone under a tree in this dark forest on this last night before his enlightenment, a massive storm rolled in. And the legend has it that Mara, the king of demons, or Lord of Senses, as he's sometimes called. And the name Mara translates from Sanskrit as killing, slaughter, death, and hindrance. Right? So Mara created this storm, these lashing rains and wind, lightning and thunder, rocks and ash were falling to earth. It was created to terrify Siddhartha. And if you've seen some of the images of late of the tornadoes touching down in Iowa and Nebraska in these last couple days, it helps to imagine, the terror. And that night, Mara also appeared in the guise of a messenger to Siddhartha, trying to convince this former prince of the Shakya clan that his family's throne was being usurped by his cousin and rival Devadatta, and that Siddhartha should return to the palace. He should give up this quest. Right? This threat to family, to position, right? All these things are not so far away. And not only that, Mara also sent his daughters, thirst, desire, and delight, to tempt and seduce Siddhartha Gautama. And finally, Mara even challenged Gautama's right to sit where he was, to sit in that Zendo, and to realize his enlightenment. Mara said, "Who can you call as a witness to your clarity, to your insight?" And at that point, Shakyamuni reached down and touched the earth. He called on the great earth as his witness. And touching the earth, the Buddha revealed himself in that moment as completely free. He looked up and he saw the morning star appear, and he was awakened to reality. He was touching reality. And that moment of touching, not separateness, manifests in the world. And we see that moment memorialized in countless Buddha statues in the earth witness mudra. He has his right hand resting on his knee and the fingers extended down and brushing the earth. And his left hand sits palm up in his lap in the meditation mudra. The wisdom born through not knowing in zazen and connecting in this moment of touching the earth, these two things. And if you see these statues, it's a gentle posture. It's very much a human posture, something that you and I can inhabit right now. And since last week, since Earth Day, really, I've been thinking about that moment, that posture that Shakyamuni took up. What did he experience in that night, in that battle with Mara's legions, as it's often talked about? And how did touching the earth transform those fears for Siddhartha Gautama? Right? And I guess, what does that mean for us today, 2,600 years later? And the koan, the reality body, case number 52 from the Book of Serenity, seems helpful to me. Kaoshan asked Elder D, the Buddha's true reality body is like space. It manifests form in response to beings, like the moon in the water. How do you explain the principle of response? D said, like an ass looking in a well. Kaoshan said, you said a lot indeed, but you only said 80%. D said, what about you, teacher? Kaoshan said, like the well looking at the ass. So if we look at the story of Shakyamuni on that night before his enlightenment, uh, we might see Mara's appearances as Shakyamuni's own fears appearing, his doubts about his path, his confusion coming up in his mind. If we see Mara's appearances as the Buddha's grasping, his pushing away, his anger, his struggles, his insecurities, then it might feel like a familiar thing to us, right? Especially after 2 periods of sitting zazen. What was arising for you? And like Siddhartha Gautama, we live in a world filled with pain and horrible inequality. And we constantly make choices of how we should respond, how we will respond. I have the good fortune of working with college students these days, and spending time in this world of creativity. These students manifest brilliance at times. Their passion is something that inspires me every day. And they are also living in a time of great fear, and they're aware of it. Right? In addition to the war in Gaza, there are more than 45 armed conflicts happening today in the Middle East. Right? And depending how you count it, there's about 200 armed conflicts happening worldwide. Right? And of course, around the world, where you are born and to whom, the color of your skin, your religion, your gender, who you love, all these things become decisive in creating a life of opportunity or one of deprivation and suffering. Right? The 3 poisons, greed, anger, and ignorance, are appearing on all levels, right? In our governments, corporations, neighborhoods, communities, even within our families, within our hearts. So even if you have the privilege of wealth, like Siddhartha, who is highborn at the time, you still encounter old age, sickness, and death, just like he did. Loss and change come no matter how tightly we cling. And of course, our modern way of life today has severely damaged the environment, the great earth. And on the Cape, we're extraordinarily aware of the habitat loss. We live on a spit of land that's being washed away ever more quickly. These massive storms we see, rising seas, heat deaths every year, climate refugees, pandemics. All of these are part of today's reality that will get exponentially worse. We're aware of it. The youth are especially aware of it. And so how do we respond? right? When we're face to face with disaster, climate disaster, with death, killing, and slaughter, right? How do we respond when endless hindrances arise, when Mara appears and appears and appears in legion? And unfortunately, our most common response is to feed fears, stoke our anger, and lash out at them, those people doing the wrong thing, those others, or lash out at ourselves for not living up to what we should be doing. When we immerse ourselves deeply in misguided views, says the Lotus Sutra, we attempt to get rid of suffering through suffering. Right? We attempt to get rid of suffering through suffering. Fortunately, in this vast Zendo where we find ourselves today, we're practicing a path that can serve us and serve the world. And Shakyamuni and all our Zen ancestors point the way through their examples. Thich Nhat Hanh and Enkyo Roshi are pointing the way through their examples. But this pointing, this teaching only gets us so far. Right? No matter how much we hear it described, we can't understand it until we taste it, like the rice cake. You have to take a bite, right? Like our cup of coffee. We can only fully understand it when we drink it. And so, coming together to sit, we look into this well of great reality. Shakyamuni held his left hand in the meditation mudra, this mudra of looking at our minds. And this is crucial. But looking in is only 80%, as Kaoshan said. When we attend to the moments appearing and unfolding in our zazen, we see fears arising, doubts arising, our desires, our clinging, our aversions, our anger, our disappointments, longing, lust, hatred, all of these things come up. This is the karmic weight we carry around, our habits of body and mind. Mara's army appears over and over. And our practice is to bear witness to this appearing, bearing witness to the joy and suffering of the world, as we say in our precept, is doing good. This is reaching down and touching the earth. This is encountering the real, encountering and responding in this world of suffering. Right? The earth bore witness to Shakyamuni's suffering. Feeling the earth, touching in that exact moment, the Buddha put down his load. He put down what he was carrying, and he was light. He was enlightened. The morning star appeared. The world appeared in that moment of connection. And when we sit here aware of this great unfolding that we are part of, we can feel the earth supporting us. Right? And this is the instruction we give every day during zazen. Sit upright. Feel yourself supported and stable. Feel the earth supporting you. Fingertips and earth touched in that moment. And there was just touching. No Shakyamuni, no Mara, no earth, no sitter, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind. Right? This emptiness that we chant about in the Heart Sutra is revealed in that moment of touch. When the well looks back at the ass, right? This is mutual manifestation. When the well looks back, there's no separation. It's a mutual moment of looking. Witnessing arises. As we say, you are not it. It is actually you. Kaoshan told Elder Day, the student, that the Buddha's reality body manifests form in response to beings. Right? So what form is needed in this moment of conflict? You encounter a protester. How do you manifest? You see someone in fear, right? What can you do? When you encounter a person living on the streets, right? Sometimes it's a smile. Sometimes it's $1. Sometimes it's a conversation. Maybe just listening, right? And sometimes it's stepping forward, speaking up, speaking out. Last night, I played a concert of Middle Eastern music on a college campus, and there were about 30 musicians involved. And these musicians were from all over, many from different parts of the Middle East. We had Palestinian, Syrian, Egyptian, Jordanian musicians. There were Jews and Muslims and Christians and at least one Buddhist among us. And this audience was similarly diverse. We had students and faculty, community members. And we played for about an hour and a half, and people danced. They created beauty and community for that time. This act of musicking together, this touching of sound, moment, and joy resonated. Right? We held the great sadness of this moment in that space and also put it down, however briefly. When Shakyamuni touches the earth, the great earth and all reality is manifest in that touch. If Shakyamuni were simply looking into the well, or we can say if he were touching the earth, he would have still been separate from the earth. He couldn't have lightened himself of this endless arising of hindrances, this endless appearing of Mara. In the Genjo Koan, Dogen puts it like this: to carry the self forward and illuminate myriad things is delusion. That myriad things come forth and illuminate the self is awakening. Right? That moment of touching, the fundamental point, is actualized. Bearing witness is manifest. And this bearing witness is not Shakyamuni bearing witness. It's not the earth bearing witness, but it is attention, tending to the moment. In this moment, how do we manifest the reality body in response to the ever-rising forms and challenges of this moment? Right? This morning we come together in this vast Zendo. This is a response. Mary Oliver puts it this way in her essay, Long Life. And we might in our lives have many thresholds, many houses to walk out from and view the stars, or to turn and go back to for warmth and company. But the real one, the actual house, not of beams and nails, but of existence itself, is all the earth with no door, no address separate from oceans or stars, or from pleasure or wretchedness either, or hope or weakness or greed. Right? This is our Zendo. So thank you for your practice this morning.